Hello, I'm Barbara Lee Diamondstein for Interior Design, The New Freedom. Today we'll be talking to Joe D'Urso, who is widely known as a master of minimalist design. Client knows what they won't get when they seek his help. Joe, perhaps you can tell us what it is that they will get. What are the hallmarks of your design, and for what is your work best known?
Well, first of all, I would like to think that my clients will get a lot of attention. My interest in working with interiors, and especially with residential projects, is to really try to establish a relationship with a client that is an ongoing one, that deals with the process. I think it has to evolve. It's not the sort of thing that you can start immediately knowing exactly what someone might need or what might feel that they desire. But I think that is probably the thing that I most enjoy about working, is the relationship I have with my clients.
You don't seem to leave it as less is more and let us try to cope with that. There's always a deeper philosophy to what it is that you do. As I gather it, you've made the point that you feel that your style offers a background for living, a nearly but not precisely neutral background that permits the personalities of your clients to come through. Is that accurate?
I think that my interest and the interest of my clients when they come to me is to, they recognize that for the most part the space has to be transformed. It may be an interesting space, but it doesn't work for what they need, for their lifestyle. It may be a space that has exciting elements about it, but may have been designed for the family structure or social structure of the 20s or 30s. It's really not too unlike a stage set, I think, where the action of the play really makes the set important. It makes it make sense. Unless you see it in use, it really is incomplete.
What do you do when a client comes to you who possesses, let us say, a great number or even just a few beloved antiques, some paintings, a number of things that one doesn't, if one is not familiar with your work, generally associate with your approach to design?
You know, it's a human thing to hold on to something until you have something new to grasp onto. So that in many instances, people cling to things when, during the process or after the apartment or space is finished, they no longer need those things, and they kind of eliminate many of the things they thought they needed on their own. And I question people. I said, do you really want that? Do you really need it? Do you understand that perhaps this is not a good example of what it is? People often think they have a real Tiffany lamp or something like that, and it's not. It's a reproduction or it's something. And I think, you know, if you can expose people to the real thing, they're likely to make a different judgment about things.
Well, is it ever difficult to convince a client to simplify not only their living spaces, but their possessions, and presumably as a result of that, their lives?
I think this is what people want. I think this is why they come to a professional designer. They're coming for the discipline that's involved. They're coming to try to organize elements that may have gotten disorganized at various points.
How do you urge, or perhaps even insist, that they edit their possessions?
I don't insist. Usually they have come to me with that already having been done. It's a very thoughtful process. I don't think that I'm the kind of a designer that someone just picks up the phone book and rings up and without any kind of idea of what is involved on their part and what my services will involve.
You say that by the time a client comes to you, they are familiar with your work and somewhat informed about your approach to design. It seems to me that there is a collaboration that must take place between the designer and the client. What is the commitment that you expect from the client in this collaboration of yours? And is it a collaboration?
Oh, it's definitely a collaboration. I think the collaboration can go as far as they're willing to go, and obviously different projects require different kinds of collaborations, the scale of the project, the length of the project. Ideally, there's an element of trust, and then the role is very clear that you are providing a service, and that you are listening to them, and that their needs are being fulfilled in a much more interesting way than they ever thought of.
This almost clutter-free environment that you managed to create. How does that measure up to the kind of, I guess, disorganization of contemporary life? Is it possible for most people, or is it even desirable for most people to live, well, so cleanly as a Durso design would have them do?
It's interesting you should use that word clean, because I had an experience with a friend recently who, for personal reasons, had to move back to a much smaller apartment than the one that she was in recently. She had sublet this apartment. And I had been there a few times, and she was really unhappy with the space. And one evening, just spontaneously, we decided to tackle it and see what we could do. And I started, pulling things around. And I pulled everything away from the walls. There's quite a bit of furniture. And as we pulled the things away from the walls, things started to fall away from the walls, pictures that were stuck back there and boxes and so forth and so on. And it was fascinating to see how we were able to eliminate a lot of things that she didn't even realize she had, practically. And after working for a couple of hours, she said, it's really fascinating, because now I can really see that it's not only logical, but it's a clean way of living. It's that you can see everything, And I think there's something to be said about that. I think that if one isn't careful, one ends up living in a storeroom.
Well, how do you help discipline the client? This collecting urge, be the objects precious or sentimental, seems to be very widespread, more widespread than ever.
It's being aware of decisions that you make. If you want to hang something on the wall, then you no longer have a blank wall. And if that blank wall provided a certain calm or a serenity to you, and you put something on it, that thing that goes on it should be equal, if not more, than what was there before. And so you just have to be constantly in touch with your environment, and you have to be constantly questioning yourself, why am I putting this here? Why is that there? And by doing that, I think that you make the right decisions. You make decisions that are right for you. You can go into someone's environment, it can be absolutely almost empty with a couple of flowers, and that can be very exciting, Or you can go into someone else's, and it can be just filled with books and filled with objects and filled with things, and that can be very exciting. It's because it's felt, it's real.
I guess most of us are so caught up with the business of living that we don't have as much time as we'd like to look at the way we live.
You go to a museum and you see a show that you love, and you see a poster, and you buy the poster, and you take the poster and you put it on your wall because maybe you think that wall needs something, or you have a corner that's empty and you go out and you buy a plant because you saw in a magazine that the corner of an apartment should have a plant, and so forth and so on. And I think that we're under all these pressures all the time to conform and to fill and to justify things in material ways rather than just appreciating them as empty spaces or silent moments in space, and really being content with the mental memory of having seen that show instead of having to have evidence that you were there,
Is your style especially suited to any particular style of living, a particular age group or economic group, a particular kind of situation? Can anyone live with a Durso interior?
I don't think I have a particular style. I think that my clients have been very wide in range, in age group, and families and single people, and I really think that I have succeeded in solving individual problems as they come along. And none of the decisions are really arbitrary, and they're not preconceived.
But there are certain things that I would consider the hallmarks of your design, Joe. I think it would be fair to say that a kind of spareness, the use of industrial materials, often glossy white walls and dark gray interiors. Wouldn't you characterize that as being typical of some of your work?
Yes, I suppose if you look at it that way, but I don't think that. I think that you have to analyze each of those decisions separately, and I think that if you do analyze them, and I do this with my clients, I don't just say this is what you're going to have, that's it.
You've often said that neutral, these backgrounds that you sometimes describe as neutral, does not mean bland. What does neutral mean?
I don't think one can use the word neutral, really. I think it's kind of an easy word that is used often, but I certainly, neutral suggests bland. I mean, it suggests nothingness. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I don't want to think that the spaces are neutral in that sense. But I think that hopefully they should be inspiring, and they should generate some kind of communication between the use of the space and the client.
You have, among other things, recently designed a number of pieces of furniture, a number of things. I guess it'd be fair to say that Knoll Furniture has long been identified with good design. They're the folks who gave us the Mies chairs and the Saarinen chairs.
Mies gave them the chairs, not the other way around.
And now Durso has given them a number of things that you have, I guess, helped reform and recharge their identity in that new Venturi and Rauch showroom by some of the designs that you've created from them. In fact, I guess you are the first young designer that they commissioned to do new furniture. Can you tell us something about what it is that you have created for them?
The products are categorized in 3 different ways. We have what we call low tables and high tables, which really mean dining height tables or work height tables, and lounge seating, which is, all of them I sort of consider to be a system, kind of a concept about the function that they were solving. The lounge seating can be had in several different sizes. The idea there being a very relaxed, informal approach to a sofa, where the depth and the pillow arrangement is really much more casual and much more, I think, physical than many other sofas on the market.
Can that sofa also be a bed?
Yes, it can be.
How wide is it as contrasted to
the seat height is
traditional?
39 inches, which is about the width of a twin bed. So, I mean, they're really meant to be, you're meant to relax. I think that anyone who's not relaxed and really willing would have a hard time on the sofa. I've noticed people in the showroom sitting on it, and if you are kind of self-conscious and you feel you shouldn't be doing what you're doing or whatever, a little bit awkward, I think you might have a problem with it, but anyone that really is just sort of attacks it.
Able to melt into the upholstery.
Yes, and I think that that's good, because I think the ultimate use, it will be in a situation where the person has gotten used to it and is really using it. And on that level, I think it offers something that's very, very, was very needed. The high tables, again, are a system, and I think what's exciting about those is that it's a very large range of products and really deals very thoroughly, I think, with the idea of shape. And even in terms of materials, we have materials ranging from plastic laminate, and then we have a wood, and we have marble and stones. And it's interesting because we've sold a lot of the high tables, and I was looking at the sales reports recently, and so many of them have been ordered in black, even though we have these other materials, marbles and...
How do you explain that?
I don't know. I think that it's... people are responding to the shape and the detailing and the proportions and the kind of understated quality to them.
What's it like for someone as disciplined and philosophical and as precise as you are, working with a commercial manufacturer, trying to combine the practical with the aesthetic? What was that all like?
Well, my big experiences in that were with Calvin Klein, and it was fascinating to me because one project in particular, the Calvin Klein menswear showroom, I was involved with the planning of the company, and it was interesting because I think that the design and the needs of the space, which was a space that they chose, really did affect and influence and exchange with the way the business was organized, because we were able to all sit down together and decide how best to express in physical form, in physical space form, the needs of showroom space, office space, public relations space.
You're particularly fond of industrial objects and a kind of industrial aesthetic. Sometimes I expect that you're the fellow who gave us high tech before it was so named. How did you first become interested in the use of that material?
It was really out of the inability to find anything in the normal sources that really satisfied the needs that I had. You know, and the high-tech thing is, you know, design is not like a vending machine where you go and you push a button, you push high-tech and that comes out, or postmodern or whatever it might be. I remember when I first started working on my own, and we had all these catalogs from all the different furniture firms and the hardware companies and so forth and so on, that I couldn't find really, there was very little that was on the market that was sort of designer-oriented products that I felt was worth using. So I started looking elsewhere. And it's just a simple fact that the design field, the design market, has been very badly influenced by consumerism, I think, and has gotten off the track. It happened a long time ago, and I think it got to the point where something else had to happen. And I think that the high-tech thing, you know, for whatever, again, I think there are all sorts of topics one discuss on that, but I think that the point there, for me, was simply saying there are other sources for a faucet, or a chair, or a light fixture. And often these sources were really much more on fact, because they were not trying to appeal to someone's sentimentality, or they were not trying to imitate materials to make one feel cozy, you know, or warm, or any of these things. They really were engineered products. They were good design, and that's where that's all that means. But it's not a movement. It's not a
in the light of that, what's most important to you then? Is it function? Is it comfort? Is it aesthetics?
Obviously, as a designer, I'm very interested in comfort. I'm very interested in function. But again, the comfort is very subjective. It's what is appropriate for that particular situation. You know, obviously, this chair might be comfortable for this situation, but it would not be comfortable for me to live with, because it's not the way I live.
How is the way you live? What is the way you live? What's the kind of Durso design that you've created for yourself?
Well, you know, I think the most important thing is to find a beautiful space to use for the period of time that we're here, to use it. And I have found a beautiful space. And it seems to me that in New York, I have sort of a list of needs that I would have for my ideal space, and high ceilings, fireplace, sunlight, very important to me. I have those things. And other than that, I mean, I haven't really been able to shape the environment in quite the way that I perhaps would if I, you know, in a certain different economic situation, but it's a very beautiful architectural space.
I guess it's spatial complexity that most interests you about most jobs that you have. Let's talk about a specific one for a moment. I'm thinking about an apartment, an old apartment on West 67th Street in Manhattan that you have designed. In that apartment in an older building, were you tempted at any time to strip the detail, or did you perceive this job, for example, as one of cleaning up or space manipulation? Can you talk about that?
Well, again, what was exciting about that project was that it was a wonderful space to begin with, so that one has a lot going for you immediately. Again, it was really the budget that determined much the way we approached the design. It was a very small budget to do a lot. So even if I wanted to rip out all the moldings and find the structure of the space and deal with that, it would have been inappropriate. It would have been out of the range of the design program, so it wasn't done. So I think you have to, that to me is so important, is understanding the appropriateness of every aspect of the project once you get it.
What does a Durso job cost today? Does minimalism cost less, or is the adjective minimal restricted only to the eye, not to the pocketbook?
Well, I think that, again, it ranges enormously. I've done whole apartments for relatively not a lot of money. I mean, I tell people sometimes, younger people, $40,000 or $50,000 for an apartment, say, my God, that's such a lot of money, you know. It's also relative, but it depends, and I don't have any...
That is a lot of money.
Well, it's a lot until you start breaking it down, and you see where it goes, and you see how much it costs.
Where does it go? And you're in a typical, quote, budget job, where does the money go?
Well, just to paint an apartment in a decent way today is many thousands of dollars if it's an apartment of any scale.
But because of your architectural training, you're also involved in a lot of lighting and heat and air conditioning and things of that sort.
You can be, but you don't have to be. I mean, you can light an apartment with one light. You can have just candlelight. It doesn't have to be expensive to be beautiful. But I think it's understanding what you have to work with at the beginning and then carving it up in the way that you really feel will make it work.
In that West 67th Street apartment, we talked about how special the space was. Do you prefer that kind of space, or perhaps even a modern high-rise apartment where the space is more neutral and you have more of an opportunity to create the kind of design that would represent your intentions?
The nice thing about being busy, you know, about having 10 projects is that very often they're very different. So you have everything. You're working on a big apartment with low ceilings, you're working on a small apartment with high ceilings, you're working in an old building, you're working in a brand new one, you're working on one that's not even built yet. So that's exciting, to have many different projects to work on. And I, for one, personally always relate more to older buildings because very often you have character, you have a certain quality of construction, you have a structure that you can really, you know, bang around and knock around without the whole thing falling in on you.
You work alone now, but you have worked with Ward Bennett, and I know he was a great influence on your career. Can you say a word or two about that and about his significance in American design today?
I think Ward sort of embodies the whole concept of a total design, you know, of someone who really is interested in every aspect of the design process. And I've always found that to be something really, you know, to aspire to. On a personal level, having known Ward for a long time now, a lot of the exposure that I've had in traveling, particularly, was largely responsible to my working with him and being a friend of his, and that was really, I think, something that hopefully shows very positively in my work today.
Have you ever worked in partnership with another person, and would you like to?
In doing our office, the office that I share with Bob Bray and Mike Scheibel, that was a collaborative, and that worked very well. We had a good time doing that. I think I could.
Why don't you describe that building to us, this Beaux-Arts building that's, I guess, about a little more than 80 years old that you work in, and what the space is like, and what it's like, in fact, to share space with other designers with whom you have, I guess, shared space for more than a decade as well.
I'm sure we influence each other. I mean, it would have to be that way. We're friends, and we share the same sources of inspiration. I mean, that's what makes for friends. But on a practical level, I mean, it makes a tremendous amount of sense to me to share a space such as that. It's an exciting environment, and the space is, as you know, is very beautiful, and we have beautiful light, and we have beautiful view.
Let's talk about those sources of inspiration for a moment. I know that you're very heavily influenced by architecture and art. Are there any particular sources that you invoke?
I suppose that native architecture that really has not been designed in the sense of, well, I'm talking about, you know, a Japanese house or Egyptian architecture of a certain period, or Italian hill town architecture. I mean, you can, everywhere in the world, architecture that has evolved slowly and with a real relationship to the living in a certain climate with a certain material of the area. I think that's really been a very large influence to me.
What's the best and or the most satisfying job you've ever done?
The one that comes to mind is the Calvin Klein menswear showroom. That was really exciting. It happened at a time where I was somehow, I don't know why, or I'm sure I just sort of did it, where I really lived and breathed the project. I was there practically every day for the 4 or 5 months it was under construction. And it was a very complicated project for me. Up until that point, I had not done anything nearly as large. It was a raw space.
What gave Calvin the courage to do that?
Calvin always, I don't think he thinks about things that way. He just does whatever he thinks is right and exciting for the moment.
One impact of inflation and spiraling construction costs is that most of us are going to be able to afford only a smaller house or a smaller apartment. And over the next 20 years, it's been predicted that the way we live will change very radically. Among other things, we're going to have to live in less and less and less space. I think it would be particularly interesting to hear you tell us what you think the best way to scale down is. What do we do and how do we do that? How do we do that without sacrificing our own human space needs and our own individuality?
Well, I think that there has to be, and there will be, a challenge to the direction that new building is going in today. I think I focus immediately on just the concept of window, of what windows have become, of what they've degenerated into being in these speculative buildings. And I think we're almost at the point now where it just simply will be, people will not tolerate it, this direction anymore. And I don't know what the...
Well, what recourse do we have?
I think we need beautiful windows. I really do. And with that will go hopefully higher ceilings. And I think the spaces can come in perhaps more, but somehow when they're coming in, they have to go up a little bit.
For opening another window to design and doing it in such a thoughtful and such a human way. Thank you, Joe D'Urso, for being with us today. I'm Barbara Lee Diamonstein for Interior Design, The New Freedom.